I was 10 years old when my parents brought home my little sister, Emily. She was only 4 at the time, tiny, pale, with curls like threads of sunlight, and eyes too big for her fragile face. I remember the first moment she walked into the house. Mom holding her hand gently, Dad carrying her small pink backpack, and Emily staring at me like I was some unfamiliar creature she wasn't sure was safe to approach. "Alex," Mom said, her voice trembling with a mixture of excitement and nerves. "This is your new sister." I smiled at her, but she didn't smile back. She didn't say anything. She didn't even nod. She simply held tighter to Mom's hand and stared. From the start, Emily was quiet, frighteningly quiet. Not shy, not cautious. Silent. The kind of silence that didn't feel natural for a child. The kind that felt heavy. At first, I didn't think much of it. Kids could be shy, especially in a new family. I figured she'd warm up eventually. But days became weeks, weeks became months, and still, nothing. She didn't speak a word. She didn't gesture much, either. Sometimes she would nod or shake her head. Sometimes she would tug on someone's sleeve when she needed something. Sometimes, when she was scared, she would cover her ears and curl up like she was making herself smaller. But her voice stayed locked away. My parents tried everything: speech therapy, sign language classes, doctor appointments, child psychologists. Each visit ended with the same frustrating conclusion: we're not sure why she isn't speaking. One doctor suggested trauma. Another suggested selective mutism. Another suggested developmental delay. But none of them really knew. Meanwhile, I grew up watching her, trying to figure out how to draw her out of that quiet world she lived in. I became her unofficial translator, even though I didn't have any words to translate. I learned the subtle ways her eyes widened when she wanted something, how she tapped her finger on the table for attention, how she tugged on my shirt when she didn't want to be alone. She couldn't talk, but she communicated with me more than anyone else. Maybe because I was the only one patient enough to sit with her for hours without expecting anything back. In a strange way, we understood each other. But there was always this ache, a constant sting in my chest. I wanted to hear her voice. Just once. Just a whisper, a laugh, a cry. Anything. I remember one night when I was 12. I woke up thirsty, walked past her bedroom, and noticed her door cracked open. Light from the hallway fell across her small body curled under her blanket. She wasn't asleep. Her eyes were open, staring at the blank wall. I walked in gently. "Em," I whispered. "You okay?" She didn't move. "Nightmare." She slowly rolled toward me, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. She reached out, just a little, fingers curling as if to ask me to stay. I sat beside her bed. She grabbed my sleeve, holding it like it was a lifeline. It broke my heart how such a small gesture could scream so loudly. I stayed with her until she fell asleep again, her tiny hand still clutching my arm. Mom said she never did that with anyone else. As the years passed, Emily grew closer to me, but not the world. She followed me around the house, like a shadow. When I did homework, she sat beside me doodling. When I played basketball in the driveway, she sat on the curb kicking pebbles. When I watched TV, she nestled against my arm with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She never spoke, never called me by name, never answered when teachers called on her in class. But when I was around, she was calm, safe. That became my purpose, to be whatever made her feel safe. By the time I turned 16, Emily was 10, still trapped in silence. School was harder for her now. Kids could be cruel without meaning to be. They stared, whispered, sometimes mocked her for not talking. But she never reacted. She held everything inside, letting it pile up like stones on a fragile heart. I remember one winter afternoon when I found her sitting alone on the swings at the park, snowflakes settling in her hair. She wasn't swinging, just letting the swing creak beneath her as she stared at her shoes. "Em," I said softly as I approached. "You okay?" "Mom said you ran out of school without saying anything." She didn't look at me. She just stared at the frozen ground. I knelt in front of her. Did something happen? Her lips trembled. She pulled her sleeves over her hands and fidgeted with the fabric. She looked so small, almost swallowed by the oversized purple coat she wore. I sighed and gently reached for her hand. As soon as I touched her, she broke. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling silently down her cheeks. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against my shoulder, sobbing without a sound. It was the most painful kind of crying, the kind that doesn't make noise. I held her until the sun dipped behind the trees and the world turned cold enough for our breaths to turn white. I didn't know what had happened at school, but I knew it didn't matter. As long as she had me, she'd be okay. Or so I thought. But things got worse the following year. Emily's anxiety grew. Her silence became heavier, like something was gripping her throat from the inside. She started having nightmares more frequently. She'd wake up trembling, staring at the door like she expected someone to walk in. One night, I found her sitting on her bedroom floor with her hands covering her ears, as if blocking out someone yelling, though the house was silent. I sat beside her and slowly pulled her hands away. She looked up at me with eyes that begged for help. I hugged her tight. "It's okay," I whispered. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." But even then, part of me knew something was wrong. Something deeper, something I couldn't understand. Something she couldn't tell me. One afternoon, a thick envelope arrived from the adoption agency. It was addressed to my parents. I didn't mean to see anything, but the papers spilled out on the dining table when my dad opened it, and a photograph fluttered onto the floor. A picture of Emily. Not the Emily we knew, but a younger version of her, in a different home, standing beside a woman whose face I didn't recognize. The woman wasn't smiling. Dad quickly gathered the documents and stuffed them back into the envelope. But I had already seen the edges of something darker. Phrases like prior custody, incident, caregiver investigation, and temporary placement. My stomach twisted. Something had happened in her early years. Something no one had ever told us. That night, I sat beside Emily on the couch. She leaned against me like always, quiet, peaceful, at least on the outside. But now I couldn't look at her without feeling my chest tighten. What had she been through? What memories were trapped behind that silence? And why did I get the sinking feeling that whatever it was, it wasn't done with her yet? The night after I found the adoption papers, I barely slept. My mind kept drifting back to those words: incident, investigation, temporary placement. They felt like puzzle pieces scattered across a table, but someone had thrown away the picture on the box. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But Emily's behavior, her silence, her nightmares, something terrible had shaped her world before we ever entered it. I couldn't ask her. She couldn't answer. And even if she could, I didn't want to reopen wounds she had spent years trying to bury. But the question ate at me. I needed answers. Not for me, for her. The next afternoon, I found Mom sitting in the living room sorting mail. Dad had gone to work early. Emily was upstairs coloring in her notebook. I took a deep breath. "Mom," I said quietly. She looked up with a warm smile. "Hey, sweetheart, what's wrong?" I saw some of the papers from the adoption agency." Her smile faded. "I didn't mean to," I said quickly. "They just fell out of the envelope." Mom closed her eyes for a moment, then set the mail aside. She motioned for me to sit. I hesitated. I don't want to pry, but I think I deserve to know. Emily's my sister. I want to understand what she's gone through, why she's the way she is. Mom rubbed her palms together, a habit she had when nervous. "Alex," she began softly, "Emily's past is complicated. We didn't keep it from you to hide anything. We just didn't want it to affect how you saw her. It won't. I meant that." Mom exhaled heavily. Her birth mother struggled a lot. There were reports of neglect. She left Emily alone for long periods, sometimes days. Social workers intervened multiple times, but the situation kept repeating. Eventually, they removed Emily from the home permanently. Neglect, being left alone, days without comfort. No wonder she clung to me the way she did. Was she hurt? I asked quietly. Mom hesitated. "We don't know everything, but we do know she was found crying in a locked room, terrified, dehydrated. She was barely 3 years old." My chest tightened painfully. "At that age," Mom whispered, "she may not even remember all the details. But trauma that early, it leaves marks. Deep ones." I swallowed, fighting the sting behind my eyes. My little sister, locked in a room, crying, alone. How could anyone? I cut myself off, anger boiling in my veins. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. "We've given her a home, Alex. A safe one. And you've been the closest person she has. More than us, sometimes." I lowered my gaze. "I just want to help her." "You already do," Mom said. "More than you know." That night, I sat at the foot of my bed thinking about everything Mom told me. Emily had been abandoned by the one person who was supposed to love her most. No wonder she didn't trust the world with her voice. No wonder she only held on to me. But learning the truth made something else clear. Emily's silence wasn't a choice. It was a shield. And something told me it wouldn't fall unless she felt safe enough, loved enough, to let it. Days passed. Weeks. Life returned to its quiet rhythm. Emily still followed me everywhere. Still held my sleeve when she needed comfort. Still remained silent. But now, I saw her differently. With more instinct to protect her, more patience, more understanding. One afternoon, I came home from school and found her in her room, sitting on the floor with a stuffed rabbit in her lap. She was brushing its ears with a small purple comb. She looked peaceful. "Hey, Em," I said as I sat beside her. She glanced up, gave me a tiny nod, then returned to brushing the rabbit. "Want to watch a movie later?" I asked. "Maybe that animated one you like." She paused, then tugged lightly on my sleeve, her way of saying yes. Life felt strangely stable, calm. For the first time in a long time, I almost felt like things were normal. But normal didn't last. It was a Thursday, a regular school day, nothing unusual. Emily didn't say goodbye when I left for school, but she never did. I gave her a gentle pat on the shoulder, and she responded by placing her small hand over mine for a brief moment, her version of a farewell. Around noon, I got called out of class. The school secretary told me my mom was on the phone, her voice strained. "Alex," she said, "you need to come home." "It's Emily." My heart stopped. What happened? Is she okay? She's not hurt, but something scared her. Badly. Please just come home. I didn't even wait for permission. I ran out of the office and biked home faster than I thought possible. When I burst through the door, I found Mom sitting on the couch with Emily clinging to her side like a terrified kitten. Mom's eyes were full of worry. Emily's eyes were full of something I'd never seen in her before. Pure fear. The room felt heavy, silent in a way that wasn't normal, even for her. "What happened?" I whispered. Mom stroked Emily's hair. She had a panic attack, a severe one. She collapsed while drawing. When I got to her, she was shaking, covering her ears, trying to speak, but she couldn't get anything out. Emily trembled visibly, burying her face against Mom's shoulder. I knelt in front of her. "Em," I said softly, "I'm here." She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes met mine, wide, watery, pleading. Then something happened that chilled me. She reached out a trembling hand and touched her own throat. Not her chest, not her stomach, her throat, as if trying to tell me something, as if something was wrong there. I gently took her hand. "It's okay," I whispered. "Whatever it is, you're safe." But in her eyes, I saw a message she couldn't speak. "No, I'm not." From that moment, I knew something was changing. Something inside her was shifting, breaking, rising to the surface after years of silence. I just didn't know what it was. And I didn't know it would lead to the moment she finally spoke. The moment she would call me brother, with tears streaming down her cheeks. The moment that would change everything. Emily didn't sleep that night. I didn't either. Every time I passed her room, I saw her sitting up in bed, hugging her stuffed rabbit, staring at the doorway like she expected someone to walk through it. Something was haunting her. Something she couldn't say. Something she couldn't even point to. Something she feared would return. The next morning, I asked Mom if I could take the day off school. She agreed without hesitation. Emily needed me, and I wasn't about to leave her. I spent the morning sitting outside her bedroom, close enough for her to know I was there, far enough to give her space. Every so often she'd peek out, checking I hadn't left. When she saw me, her shoulders relaxed slightly before she retreated again. Around noon, she finally stepped out of her room and walked toward me slowly, her fingers twisting nervously around the hem of her sweatshirt. "Hey, Em," I whispered. "You hungry?" She didn't nod. Instead, she lowered herself to the floor beside me, curling her knees to her chest. Then she did something she almost never did. She leaned her head against my shoulder, gently, but with a weight that felt like trust. I wrapped an arm around her. She exhaled shakily. Minutes passed in silence, her usual silence. But something was different this time. She was trying to say something. I could feel it. The way her breathing hitched. The way her fingers gripped my sleeve. The way she stared at the floor like she was searching for courage she didn't have. "Em," I said softly, "you can show me. Whatever it is. You don't have to talk. Just show me." Her lip trembled. She took my hand and placed it against her chest. Her heart was beating too fast. Then she moved my hand up to her throat again and pressed it there. It was like she was pleading with me. Help me, please. I swallowed hard. Emily, is something hurting you? Something from before. Her body stiffened. That was it. Whatever was haunting her came from her past. That evening, after dinner, her behavior worsened. She paced the hallway, wringing her hands, stopping occasionally to stare at the darkened windows like she expected a face to appear there. Mom and Dad exchanged worried glances. I stayed by her side. She didn't speak, of course, but her eyes screamed with fear. By bedtime, she refused to go to her room unless I was with her. She climbed into bed, trembling, clutching my sleeve again. Do you want me to stay? I asked gently. She nodded. I pulled a chair beside her bed and sat. She touched my arm lightly, her silent way of saying thank you, then closed her eyes. Or tried to. An hour passed. 2. She drifted into restless half-sleep, twitching, whimpering without sound, gripping her blanket like she was drowning underwater. Around midnight, she jolted awake, gasping silently, tears flooding down her cheeks. I stood instantly. Hey, it's okay. I'm here. But she wasn't looking at me. She was staring at the door again. Her lips parted, and for the first time in her life, I saw her try to speak. Her mouth shaped the word no, but nothing came out except a rasp of air. Her throat strained, her face contorted, and tears streamed down harder. She couldn't get the sound out. She was terrified. I pulled her into my arms. She clung to me, shaking violently. Shoo, I whispered. It's okay. Whatever it is, it can't hurt you anymore. You're here. With us. With me. She sobbed harder, but still silently. Her whole body trembled like she was reliving something unspeakable. I didn't know what triggered it. I didn't know why it came now. But the truth was finally clawing its way to the surface after being buried for years. And I felt powerless. The next morning, I called her therapist. She scheduled an urgent session for the afternoon. Mom drove us there. I sat beside Emily the whole time, letting her hold my sleeve. The therapist, Dr. Lane, knelt in front of Emily with gentle eyes. Emily, she said softly, can you show me what scared you? Emily froze. Her breathing quickened. Her hands shook. I squeezed her hand lightly. She looked at me, and something in her gaze shifted. Trust. Desperation. A plea for help. Dr. Lane handed Emily a stack of drawing papers. You don't have to use words, she said. Just draw. Emily stared at the paper, then at me, then back to the paper. Her hand shook as she picked up a pencil. Slowly, painfully, she began to draw. At first, it looked like random lines. A door, a small figure, a child, a large shadow behind it, a thick, dark shape that swallowed the space around the small figure. It sent chills through me. Dr. Lane's eyes softened. Emily, is that you? Emily's pencil hovered, then nodded. And the shadow? Is that someone from before? Emily's breathing hitched. She dropped the pencil and buried her face in my chest, sobbing silently. I wrapped my arms around her. She trembled like a leaf in a storm. After a long moment, Dr. Lane spoke quietly. Emily, you're safe now. Whoever that was, they can't hurt you anymore. Emily didn't respond. She couldn't. The session ended early. Emily was too distressed to continue. On the car ride home, she leaned against me, gripping my sleeve like her life depended on it. That night, she refused to leave my side. She followed me from room to room, never more than a few steps away. She clung to my arm while I ate dinner. She sat beside me on the couch, her head pressed against my shoulder, her eyes glassy and far away. And when it was time for bed, she whispered something I'd never heard from her before. Not with her voice, but with her eyes. Don't leave. I slept beside her bed again. She didn't sleep at all. Around 3 a.m., I felt a light tug on my hand. I opened my eyes. Emily was sitting up, her face wet with tears, her breathing shallow. I whispered, sitting up. What's wrong? She looked at me. Her lips parted. Her throat tightened. Her hands trembled violently. And then, she tried again. A tiny sound escaped her. A crack of air. A painful rasp. She was trying to speak. My heart pounded. Her entire body shook. I whispered, it's okay. You're safe. I'm here. She sucked in a shaky breath, tears spilling harder. And then, Then it happened. Her first sound. Her first word. Her first cry. A broken, trembling whisper. Brother. Then she collapsed into sobs. Real sobs, not silent ones, crying harder than I'd ever seen in her life. And I held her, shaking, stunned, overwhelmed, whispering, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, as she cried into my chest. For the first few seconds after she spoke that single word, brother, I didn't even breathe. I just stared at her, stunned, my heart racing like it was trying to break free from my chest. Emily had spoken. After 10 years. After countless therapists. After every doctor told us she might never say a single word. She spoke. To me. She chose me. But her voice, fragile, broken, raw from disuse, wasn't filled with joy. It was filled with fear. She clung to me, crying in harsh, jagged sobs that shook her entire body. I wrapped my arms around her, my own eyes burning. I'm here, I whispered over and over. I'm here, Em. I'm right here. Her tears soaked through my shirt. Her tiny fists clutched the fabric like she was terrified I'd vanish if she let go. Minutes passed. Maybe longer. Time felt suspended. When her sobs softened into trembling breaths, she pulled back just enough to look at my face. Her eyes were swollen and red, her cheeks wet, her lips parted like she wanted to speak again but didn't know how. You don't have to talk more, I whispered gently. You don't have to do anything. Just breathe. I've got you. She nodded, barely, then leaned into my chest again, exhausted. That morning, I told Mom everything. She froze, a mix of shock and heartbreak crossing her face. When she hugged Emily, she cried too, but not loudly, just soft, trembling tears of relief. But Emily didn't speak again that day, or the day after, or the week after. Her single word had cracked the silence, but it hadn't shattered it. Still, something had changed. She stayed closer to me than ever, if that was even possible. She held my hand everywhere we went. She slept with her stuffed rabbit in one arm and her other hand gripping my sleeve. And she started doing something new. She hummed. Not words, just soft, shaky little notes. It wasn't much. But after years of silence, that faint melody felt like a miracle. As weeks turned into months, Emily slowly began to grow again. Emotionally, mentally, cautiously. Dr. Lane called it a breakthrough, a sign that her trust had finally reached a point where she felt safe enough to let a sound escape her. But she still only said one word, and she only ever said it once. Brother. Spring arrived. Flowers bloomed in our yard, sunlight warmed the afternoons, and Emily began spending more time outside. She still didn't talk, but she smiled more, small, soft smiles that meant everything. Sometimes she'd sit on the porch swing while I played guitar. She didn't say a word, but she'd hum along, her bare feet kicking gently beneath her. One evening, Mom came outside and quietly nudged my shoulder. Alex, she said, do you want to know something? Sure. Her eyes softened. Emily's therapist thinks that when she finally spoke, she said the one word she felt safest with. The word she associated with protection, comfort, love. I swallowed. You mean? She said your name, Alex. Not with letters. Not with sound, but with meaning. Mom smiled gently. To her, you really are her safe place. I looked at Emily on the swing, humming softly, the evening sunlight catching her hair. My throat tightened. She glanced at me then, and smiled. A real one. A warm one. The kind that only existed because she trusted me. I walked over and sat beside her. She scooted closer instantly, leaning her head on my shoulder. I played a soft tune on my guitar. She hummed along. For a long time, neither of us spoke, not that she ever did. The wind rustled the leaves, the horizon glowed orange, and the porch creaked as our swing moved gently back and forth. I didn't need words. Neither did she. But in that peaceful moment, she lifted her head and did something small, but powerful. She touched my chest with 2 fingers, then touched her own. A simple gesture. But I understood. You and me. Always. Life didn't magically fix itself after that. Emily still struggled. She still had nightmares. She still froze whenever she heard certain sounds or saw certain shadows. She still battled fears she couldn't articulate. But she wasn't alone. Every fear, we faced together. Every setback, we took slowly. Every victory, even tiny ones, we celebrated. As years went on, Emily grew into a courageous, gentle young woman. She never became much of a talker. In fact, her voice remained soft and limited. But she learned to whisper words when she needed to. She learned to laugh, quietly, but genuinely. She learned to trust. And one day, when she was 18 and I was 22, she handed me a notebook. Inside, written in small, neat handwriting, were words she had never spoken aloud, but had carried for years. You saved me. You were my voice before I had one. Thank you, brother. Tears filled my eyes before I even finished reading it. Emily looked at me nervously, her fingers twisting anxiously. I pulled her into a tight embrace. You don't ever have to thank me, I whispered. I'm your brother. I always will be. She hugged me back, firmly, confidently, with a strength she didn't have when we were children. And then, softly, quietly, in the faintest whisper, she said it again. Brother, not out of fear this time, not broken, not trembling, but full of love, full of healing, full of hope. And I realized something. Emily didn't need to speak to be understood. She spoke through her courage, her resilience, her heart. Her silence wasn't emptiness. It was survival. And the moment she finally chose to break it, she chose me to hear her first word. My silent little sister, the one who never spoke a word, finally found her voice. And she used it to say the one word she had saved for the person who never left her side. Brother. The word that began her healing. The word that ended her silence. The word that meant everything.